I show 1 o'clock, so I think I'll get us started now. For those who, I'm sure you have other things to do leading up to AP. Obviously, tomorrow is October 1st, so I believe it is, right? Is it tomorrow the 1st? No, I usually don't know what day it is, so. Yes, it is. Okay, wow, I was right for once. That's great. Okay, so this is Ed Crow. I'm going to get us started now. Today we're going to talk about Medicare phone sales. So we're going to do some basics of phone sales. I'm going to focus more on today the setup. That's a big part of this is the setup, the kind of theoretically figuring out what you want to do, and just kind of tell you all the ways people go about doing it. Things like phone script, I'll talk about a little bit, but that's really not a big component. People tend to overthink the phone script, but really being set up and having the game plan is what's important, and then the tools that you need to make that game plan work. Obviously, it's not that simple. There's a lot of other pieces, but we're gonna focus on that part of it today. So we'll talk about the products that people sell, which is more or less all of them, how you get started using Sunfire and Connecture, using Medicare Bot, which is new. We'll talk about it. Using the carrier's voice signature method. Some people that still are doing technically voice sales, but they're doing the old school methods of getting the apps, and we'll talk about the lead types. So when we talk about Sunfire and Connecture, Medicare Bot, carrier voice signature, rarely do I get an agent or agency that uses all of them. They usually pick one or maybe two, depending on the scenario. So we're gonna go through that today and talk about it. Okay, so for product type, this one's pretty easy. For phone sales with Medicare, you get people that sell all of them. They sell all three types, Advantage, Supplement, and PDP. They're commonly sold on the phone, all three of them. There's not a ton of agents. We have some agents and agencies that do actually sell all three. But usually the focus is either selling supplements and PDPs or selling Advantage and Dual Advantage. Like I said, you do see some who kind of mix it up and do all of them. But a lot of times somebody will focus on either the supplement and PDP part or the Advantage and the dual part, or sometimes just purely the dual. They really go after the dual clients. But anyhow, the ways, the setups you see for this, or you'll see a true telesales agency, and by true telesales I mean they're an official Medicare call center. We'll talk about that a little more in a bit, but an official Medicare call center, and there's a bunch of big ones out there. What they usually do is we'll have the entire setup. They'll have call center status, so they have their own script, their own recording method, their own system, CRM, and those are the places that usually you will see have reps that they're paying hourly, and they'll give them a bonus, a small bonus. They'll pay them $14 to $16, $17 an hour. They'll give them $25 to $50 an app. But those people who are selling, and they have the system all set up for them to do it, and they also pay for the leads, which is a big part of it. But those people that are selling don't own the book. So they don't get renewals. If they leave, they don't own the book. They're more or less an employee. They're not an independent agent. You will see certainly independent agencies that operate as an official call center. So while they do it, that's not most of them. So usually when I do a call, most of the people on the call cannot meet the requirements to be an official call center. And I'll tell you quickly about that. But we do have some agencies that have made that transition. They've got official call center status. They are independent, and they are operating just like a call center, but they're independent. They can offer multiple products, and they have their own system and their own script, and they can use that same call center or that same call script and same call process for all of the carriers. More often you see quasi-call centers is what we call them, and those are agencies that are certainly doing phone sales, but they're not an official call center. So they're using the methods we're going to talk about to get the signatures when they need them. And they'll use multiple methods, but we'll go over each of them today. But that's more often what you see, because just quickly, to be an official call center, it takes a lot. First of all, you have to have, most of the call centers, they started it saying you had to have 5 employees. Now it's 10. The carriers say that. You have to have funding available, so they make sure that you have access to funding to pay for the leads and everything you're going to need. And you need full-time positions too. You need a quality management person, a manager, and a director. So there's a lot of requirements to be an official call center. The quasi, there really are no requirements to be a quasi call center. It's just a matter of figuring out what enrollment method you're going to use to get the signature. So if you want to get started, if somebody wants to do Medicare sales by phone, the first thing I think you should do is focus on what you want to sell. And certainly you could do both, but you don't see it as much. Some will focus on Advantage plans and dual advantage. So is that going to be your focus, or are you going to focus on Medicare supplements and PDPs? Like I said, you could, if some people are general practitioners and do both, but usually most will narrow it down. So that is the first thing, is saying, what am I going after? What's my philosophy of what I'm going to try to close? Then you have CRM, so contact management software. When you're a call center, or you're acting like when you're doing Medicare sales by phone, it does help to have a CRM. You don't have to have one, but a CRM is nice. A CRM is nice because it saves all your client data. You can schedule follow-ups. You might have your leads be set so they come right into the CRM, so it reconciles every lead that comes in. So when an independent agent has a CRM, sometimes they'll buy one on a monthly basis. A very popular one lately is Radius Bob. Strange name, I know, but a lot of agents are using it now. So Radius Bob. Zoho, not used quite as much, but it was used a lot for a while. HubSpot. And then, you don't have to have a CRM. Some of the platforms I'm going to talk about will operate as a basic CRM. So I have some agents that are literally just using an Excel file to track everything. Not the most efficient way to do it, but it's doable. But if you can have a CRM in place, it certainly will make your life easier and will make you more efficient when it comes to tracking and following up. So figure out what you're going to go after for product type. Decide if you're going to have a CRM, or if you're going to just use like an Excel file, or maybe just use one of the enrollment methods systems we have available as your CRM, which can work as well. But then you got to decide how you're going to actually enroll people. So are you going to use pure voice signature for enrollment? There's a couple different ways to do that we'll talk about. I would say voice signature, so meaning just voice, no email, no text. Voice signature would be probably the preferred method for agents that focus on dual clients, for dual enrollments. Because a lot of times, believe it or not, you still get duals who maybe aren't using email or even text for that matter. So voice signature is great. It can be used for all lines of products, but you see it the most used when people are focused on dual clients. You might maybe you're going to use email or text, or then we, believe it or not, still have some people out there that are closing, talking to people on the phone, talking to the prospect on the phone, and they're literally still emailing them an app that they print out, sign, and send back, or even sometimes mailing them apps still. So you don't see that near as much anymore, but you still see it, and believe it or not, it does work. But again, that's kind of dying out now that all these new options are becoming available for selling when you're prospecting by phone. Okay, so we'll start with Connecture and Sunfire. So this is used a lot. Agents that work with us have access to both platforms at no cost. And they're both basic CRMs, so that's not their main function, but they will save your client's data. They'll save doctor lists, drug lists. You can check doctors and drugs on there, and it will save it, which is nice. So they are a basic CRM platform if you just want to use those for your CRM. As far as feeding leads into them, click to call, those kind of things, they're not going to do that for you, but they'll at least store all the data, the applications, that type of thing. Connecture and Sunfire, while they'll quote, compare plans, you can search doctors, you can check drugs, you can do everything you could do on the CMS site with them. The enrollment process for both is text or email. So it's text or email for the scope and the app. They don't do pure voice enrollment. So the idea with them would be you're talking to the prospect on the phone, going through things with them. Pull up the plan, check their drugs, check their medications, if you're doing an Advantage plan or a PDP. And then when they're ready to buy or they want to enroll in something, then you would text or email them the app for them to click on it and enroll. Same thing with the scope as well. So Sunfire is better out of the two platforms. Sunfire is better for duals. So you will see people who focus a lot on MAPD and dual will often use Sunfire because, again, their dual enrollment's way better. You certainly can do PDPs through Sunfire. Agents that use Connecture more are ones that are a little more rounded. Maybe they're doing some MAPD enrollments, but they maybe do more SUPs and PDPs. Connecture is better for that. Connecture is not good for dual enrollments. So if you're doing a lot of duals, use Sunfire. If you're doing a lot of med SUPs, PDPs, and MAPDs, and you rarely write any duals at all, then Connecture might be the one for you. And like I said, it'll save all your clients' data. It'll save the doctors, list of doctors for them, the medication lists, and you can run all that information and check it all on those platforms. They're both going to have expanded carriers for HRAs. So those who do HRAs, the health risk assessment, which you might as well do because depending on the company, when you do that app, you do the health risk assessment, it takes 10 minutes, sometimes less. You get an extra $50 to $75 for every client you enroll if you do the health risk assessment. So Connecture for 2022 you're going to have the HRA available with Connecture for Humana, Aetna, WellCare, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and Devoted. Sunfire is going to have Humana, Aetna, WellCare, and Anthem. I know United is notably absent from that list. They are not going to be ready for AEP 2022, but they do plan to be added sometime in 2022. But that's a big change, given that for this year, you really only have the ability to do Humana's HRAs through those platforms. So they're adding the HRAs, which is a nice benefit. Okay, so just to go back for a minute. So a lot of agents that do phone sales, they aren't an official call center. So they'll use Connecture or Sunfire, and they will do text or email for enrollments and scopes. That works great, but sometimes you'll get duals. The flaw with it is sometimes you'll get duals who don't want to do email or text, or you get older clients who don't do either one either. So it's kind of the drawback to Connecture or Sunfire. However, it is heavily used by agents who sell by phone. Medicare Bot is new. We haven't even sent out the email about it yet, but we are going to have it. Medicare Bot is similar to Connecture and Sunfire. Again, it'll operate as a basic CRM, just like Connecture and Sunfire will. Same thing, you can check doctors and medications, and it'll save those lists for you. The difference is Medicare Bot, unlike Connecture and Sunfire, it is not text or email enrollment, it is a pure voice signature enrollment. So it is a system that you can plug into. It costs you nothing if you work with us. If you're contracted and certified with a carrier, you'll automatically have access to that carrier through Medicare Bot. You'll need to register and get a login for it, but you'll be able to use it. And Medicare Bot will do pure voice signature for Humana, Aetna, Cigna, and WellCare. They're certainly going to add more carriers down the road, but that's what they're going to have when they roll out tentatively on October 12th. One of the flaws right now is the voice scope. The voice signature is approved. I misprinted that on the slide. Voice signature is approved, so you can do enrollments, take the app by voice for those carriers. It's the scope that is not approved for voice yet, which is not ideal. They know they need it. They're going to get it at some point, but I just don't know exactly when the voice scope part of it will be ready. But Medicare Bot, I think, will be big. It'll be very nice because, again, if you came from a call center environment and you're used to just doing a voice signature, you'll be able to do that now from one platform. And then carriers' voice signature methods, for those who might not know, pretty much all of the carriers have their own voice signature system. And where this is used the most is if we have agents that are using Connecture or Sunfire and they're doing enrollments via text or email, they'll sometimes run into an older client or sometimes a dual, often a dual, who can't do text or email. And what they will then do is they will know they'll have some go-to carriers where they understand and know their voice signature method, so that way they can get a voice signature instead of doing the text or the email. So most of the carriers have a process. That the negative is they all tend to be different. So, United's is different than Cigna's, for example. So you got to learn the process for each one of them. If you want to know how to access these and the voice signatures for each carrier, we have that up on the site. That's available on pfsinsurance.com. When you go on the site, on the home page, it's one of the homepage scrolls like 6 or 7 different things, but when you see virtual office on the scrolling on the page, click on that. Then on the right hand side, you'll see the carrier info tab. You click on that, and then there'll be the logos for all the companies. It's not blatantly obvious, but if you click on the logo, it then will have the voice signature method and instructions for each carrier. And again, it's going to be different for each one. They're fairly similar, but you got to learn each. So you click on the logo and you can learn it. And again, that's used often with agents that are using Connecture and Sunfire, and they can't get that person to do a text or an email signature. Where I think what's nice about Medicare Bot is once that's rolled out for the 4 carriers in there, it's all the same voice signature process from one platform, and you don't have to learn 4 different signature methods for voice. So that'll be much more convenient once it's out. But for now, if you need a voice signature, this is how you can do it. I should have mentioned a couple things, by the way. I apologize. If you have questions, please send them into the webinar. There's a question section. I will answer these at the end for you. And also, we record all our webinars. So if you're on this, you will get a recording. We'll automatically send it out to you. And in fact, we send the recording out to everybody that registers. So even if you don't attend, you'll get the recording. So for future webinars, what I would suggest, if you're interested in the topic but you can't make it, just register and you'll get the recording, and then you can listen to it when you want. But again, I suggest if you have any questions, please send them in, and I'll answer them when we get done here in a few minutes. Okay, as I talked over my slide a little bit, as I mentioned, the negative of using the carrier-specific voice signature is each one's different. So you got to get familiar with them, and that can take a little bit. I mean, they're not complex, but obviously, if you want to use 5 different carriers' voice signatures, it's 5 different things you got to learn. As I mentioned before, some agents do sell by phone, and they sell by phone, but I wrote old school here because they'll talk to people, and usually this is more often done with non-dual MAs and with supplements and PDPs. But they'll talk to the person on the phone, and then they will email them an application to print out, or they'll actually have a kit ready with a return envelope. Once they really get their commitment to enroll, they'll actually mail that out for those who just can't do anything electronic. So that is still done. I mean, we still have some very successful agents that do it that way, although a lot of them now are converting over to Connecture and Sunfire. And then I'm sure once Medicare Bot's rolled out, you'll see them start using that more as well. But it still does work, and it still is used as a last resort. So the big thing is you get set up, you learn the enrollment systems, figure out what type of client you're going after. The biggest part of this is what are you going to do for leads? Because if you don't have leads, then it's not going to work. So there's a number of lead sources people use. I always get the question a lot. Well, what one's a really good one? Well, I'm yet to find a really good lead system. So if you find one that's just lights out and works really well, don't tell anybody about it, is what I would say, because they're hard to find. Leads are hard. But having said that, here's what's used most often. So telesales leads are used a lot. You can buy telesales leads you can buy them from overseas companies. That's the one we tend to promote, or to a lesser extent with domestic companies. We actually have a decent one now. What I mean by decent is the domestic companies usually just cost a lot more. That's the negative. And telesales leads are almost always used for MAPD and dual candidates. What's interesting about telesales leads is you can't cold call for an Advantage plan, so they are supplement leads. But consumers really don't know the difference between a supplement and an Advantage plan in most cases. So even though they're calling for supplements and you're talking to them about supplements, these usually will wind up being people that are actually interested in an Advantage plan or they're a dual candidate. The compliant way to handle that is when you call this person, because the way these leads work is they're callback leads. The vendor calls them, goes through a script, gets them to answer questions. If they answer yes to 5 questions, then they record that call, they send it to you, is a lead for you to call them back and try to close them either over the phone or set up an appointment. And when you talk to them, the way to compliantly do this is you talk to them about Medicare, start talking about a supplement. You can't launch in and introduce the idea of an Advantage plan. While you're talking to them, if they bring up Advantage, zero premium, dental, vision, you would say to them, okay, you're referring to an Advantage plan. We can talk about that, but I need to get a form from you. And that's when you would email or text them a scope or do a voice signature scope to compliantly then talk about Advantage. But if you get these leads that technically are Medicare supplement leads, get them on the phone and start just going right into your pitch for Advantage, you're not compliant doing that. That's a bait and switch, and technically then you're cold calling for Advantage plans. Anyhow, price points on these recorded callback leads are the overseas company we use. They're $10 a piece, so the price point's really amazing. We do now have one domestic telesales lead source that'll do leads for $12.50. That's the best we've found in the States by far. But those are definitely a good source of sales over the phone and one that we see people use often. Online leads certainly are popular as well. Online lead meaning that person went online, they tried to get a quote, they didn't actually get a quote, and it just sent their information to the agent as a lead. You see online leads sold, though, used with phone sales very often, because usually if those people are online shopping, they're not usually looking for a face-to-face. They're looking to do something usually online or over the phone. And as a result, online leads go well with phone sales. Online leads are used to sell pretty much all 3 product types, all 4 rather, MA, dual MA, supplement, and Part Ds. When you're using online leads, you got to find a good price point. Depends on if it's shared or exclusive, but for an online lead, a shared, you're probably trying to find $7 or $8 a lead. For exclusives, if you can get around $14 or $15, that'd be really good. So if you're going to work online leads by phone, you got to have a system, meaning you got to track all of them. And really the most important thing for online leads is being fast. In other words, literally the second that lead comes in, you got to be on the phone with them. A call's got to be going out. I'm probably not exaggerating when I say within 5 seconds of that lead coming in, because if you don't, somebody else is going to be on the phone with them. Because especially if you're buying shared leads, those are going out to 5 or 6 agents, and the agent that gets them first is almost always the one that's going to get that business. So you got to be set up for an online lead. If you have questions about that, call us. I would not suggest just venturing into them until you're set up for them. Facebook leads are popular now too. We have a couple different vendors that we use for Facebook leads. Pricing is a little different when you're doing leads with Facebook. You can either talk to the vendor and they'll charge you X amount per month, which will include the lead budget. So usually you're looking at about $1,000 a month. That'll generate you anywhere from 40 to 50 leads a month. And they're taking some off the top for their services because they'll set everything up for you. They'll set up the ads. They'll maintain everything. They'll post new ads. But a lot of that $1,000 is being used towards the ad budget to actually buy the paid ads on Facebook. So Facebook leads are good ones for phone sales because those people, again, are on Facebook responding, and they tend to be ones that want to be closed, that want to do business over the phone. So you can pay per lead. We have a very good company for that. The other way you can do it too is there are companies, and we can suggest some if you'd like, that will simply charge you like a monthly fee. For example, they'll charge $60 a month. They'll set up the program for you. They'll post a few ads every week for you. They'll give you content for like $50 or $60 a month, and then you would pay for the ad budget. So it's another way you can do it. And you can also post additional ads yourself if you want, but they'll give you the know-how and the setup for the whole thing. The best way to do Facebook leads financially is do it yourself. I mentioned this yesterday. It really would be worth, if you want to do Facebook leads long-term, and you don't mind putting the time in doing it yourself, again, is the cheapest way, but it really would be worth taking a class or really learning the craft of marketing on Facebook for Medicare. But doing it yourself, obviously, there's no middle person, so you're always going to come out the best. You're basically just spending your time and paying for the lead budget, but you need to know what you're doing. We just started with a vendor for Facetime Leads. We haven't tested this yet. We haven't had agents start using it, so I can't say a lot about the effectiveness of it. I am told that the closing rate is usually a bit higher, but the price is higher as well. And as the name implies, there's a vetting process. These people are found online. They do answer questions. They're then transferred FaceTime over to the agent, face-to-face on FaceTime to do a close, and usually that close would be done by phone. There are still some agents and agencies, I shouldn't say some, there's quite a few actually, that do use mailers. I always think of a mail responder as something for a face-to-face sale, but we do see agents and agencies using mailers and then closing them over the phone. It's not done as often, but it's not uncommon either. And what they're usually doing is they're doing a dual mailer, meaning they're doing a mailer for people 66 plus, and it's a dual pitch for dual eligibles. Or if they're doing a T65 campaign, they're usually pushing that out quite a ways, more than 6 months prior to turning 65. And the reason they do that is they get a better response. And they're usually doing those outside of AEP during lock-in, going after T65s. So to a lesser extent, mailers are used, but again, not as often as the other things we've talked about. And then there's still a ton of agents that use lists. We provide lists for free. They're coming from the same source. We just already pay for the service. You simply would just tell us if you work with us what you want. Hey, give me the state of Tennessee, and I want people turning 65 for the next 12 months. Or I want a 66 plus list. We'll always run them DNC compliant. Give me a 66 plus list for these counties. So you can let us know what you want. We'll run it for you. Lists are often used for supplement phone sales, either T65 lists to get people on supplements turning 65, or maybe more often people who are just trying to beat price on existing supplement prospects. So they'll ask for a 65 plus list. They're calling and they're just talking to them about their current supplement, figuring out what they have, and just trying to beat the price with the exact same supplement. Or maybe going from a G to an N or something like that. Or if they have a plan G, just trying to beat the price on it. Lists obviously are used for supplements because you can't cold call for Advantage or PDPs. And oftentimes when people use lists, they are using a predictive dialer. In my opinion, if you're going to call for supplement shopping, just to beat the price on existing supplement clients, old school kind of looking at an Excel file, looking at the list on an Excel file or using a ruler is just really slow. The people who do this successfully are usually using a predictive dialer. We have a promotional deal with Prospect Boss. We could send you that link if you want to see it, but certainly feel free to use any dialer that you think has the best price point and works best for you. But usually a predictive dialer is used just because it speeds up the amount of calls you can make in a given hour by a lot versus just calling on your own. Okay, so overall, again, it's important to figure out how you're going to get these signatures. Are you going to use Connecture and Sunfire? Are you going to learn some of the carrier's voice signature methods, maybe both? When Medicare Bot comes out, that's an option as well. But having that figured out and knowing, exactly how you're going to close these people is really important. Also, how are you going to track everything? When you're doing phone sales, one thing that's really important is follow-up. And you got to be able to track your follow-up calls, keep track of your clients and prospects. old leads that you called a couple months ago, you got to have them tracked so you can go back and follow up with them, because you will get some sales when you do follow-ups and continue to call older leads. Got to determine your lead source. Obviously, that's maybe the biggest thing here. Well, I wouldn't say it's the biggest. I think all of them are fairly important, but your lead source is certainly really important. And then when it comes to states, get a lot of agents that have come from a call center background, and they might be licensed in 40 states, for example. Well, when they worked for a call center, they didn't pay their appointment fees for the carriers. So something to know if you're coming from that situation, or if you're just an independent agent who's in multiple states, some companies do charge non-resident appointment fees. So if you say to us, hey, give me United in these 20 states, just be aware most of those 20 states will have non-resident appointment fees, and United's going to pass them on to you. It can add up. It really can. Some carriers don't charge them. So Aetna, for example, Humana, you can get licensed in all the states you want with them, because they're not going to pass that non-resident appointment fee on to you, as of today anyway. The other thing is to know the products to sell. So I usually will tell people to start on a couple states, no more than that. I mean, certainly some do start with a bunch of states, but regardless, whatever states or areas you're selling in, you really need to know. You really need to know the landscape and know what, like if you're selling duals, what dual plan has the best ancillary benefits, or what supplements, if you're selling subs, have the best prices for a 68-year-old female on a Plan G, for example. So really learn your areas and know them. And in my mind, that's what makes it difficult to sell 20 states at once. Certainly there's people that can do it. But in my mind, it makes more sense to focus on a state or two, or, if you learn 5 states really well, those, but you got to know them well and know what product is going to be the easiest to sell in that given area. So again, know your sales process, and then script. Script comes up a lot when you're on the phone. The best advice I can give is don't overthink it. We certainly have sample scripts, but there's no one script that works the best. It's really finding a script that works well for you. And a couple tips I can give about scripts is, first of all, don't ask them how their day's going. I know that's a big one. Hey, how are you doing today? They know you don't care, or so once you get to know them, maybe. But now, when you're initially calling somebody, usually I would say it's best not to, if you want to say a company name, that's fine, and your first and last name, that's great. But keep it fairly casual. I would not sound all business-like. So at the end of the day, you want to be fairly casual. You don't want to be overly business-sounding and official. And you want to get to the point with them, because you got to kind of get to them quick. And the whole idea is to start a conversation, ask some questions if you can to find out what their situation is and see how you can help them or better their situation. Again, we have sample scripts we can give you. But what I would say is you really need to take something like that and make it your own. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You got to get comfortable with making it your own script. That's all I have for today. Let's see if we have any questions. I do. Okay, good. Oh, this is a good one. Can you migrate contacts from Connecture or Sunfire? No, not easily. You can't. So it's difficult to do. There's not a quick and easy process to migrate those. So usually, if you're a person who's just selling duals, then use Sunfire. If you're selling MAPD duals and supplements, then you get in a little bit of a spot. You're going to have to use 2 systems because you have Connecture and Sunfire. What is PFS Insurance? So Crow & Associates is operated independently. So this is at Crow. I run Crow & Associates, but we're part of Pinnacle Financial Services. So what you'll see is often we will use a lot of their resources. And as an agent, you have access to Crow, and you have access to everything Pinnacle has as well. So pfsinsurance.com is Pinnacle Financial Services website, where you can access the platforms for Sunfire, Connecture, and soon-to-be Medicare Bot. Somebody said watch the online leads in some cases. Many are sold as exclusive but are not. It's a great point, and it's a great point. And what I can say is sometimes they are advertised as exclusive and they're just shared with other agents, so it's just the company being dishonest. But that, believe it or not, usually isn't the case. What really happens is the average consumer online, when they get fooled trying to get a quote and they're really submitting a lead, what happens is they shop on average on more than one site. So what will happen in that scenario is they'll click on one site for a quote that happens to be giving out exclusive leads, but usually that person will go to another site, and that other site will be either another exclusive or maybe a shared lead site. So what's happening in many cases here are they're going on online multiple places, and their information is getting sent out as a result to a bunch of places. But certainly I'm sure there are some companies that say they're exclusive, but they're not. But I think usually it's the scenario I just described is what's happening. Where's the virtual office on pfsinsurance.com? Do you need to log in? Virtual office is going to be on the home page. So when you go on pfsinsurance.com, on the scrolling images, you're going to see there'll be a link to the virtual office on one of the 6 scrolling images. You just use the arrows to get to what you want, to the right image. And yes, Pinnacle's going to require you to log in. Do we have anything else? Do we have to, okay, one more question. Do we have to contract and get appointed through PFS, or can we do that through Crow? Yeah, well, we're technically, even though we're operated separately, it contracts to the same upline more or less, but we will coordinate all that for you. So we will handle the contracting. I would say to have us be your point of contact when it comes to contracting. And we'll do whatever kind of communications with Pinnacle that's needed, but we can handle everything for you here. It looks like that's all we have. All right, well, I think that's it for questions. I appreciate everybody coming on today. Hopefully that helped you get a better idea of getting set up. Of course, there's other details, smaller details that you would have to refine, but I think this should be a good start to get going for those who haven't ventured into selling, over the phone. So appreciate your time today. Hope everybody has a good weekend coming up. Bye.